Hi, my name is Janet Lusaki, and I attend Westchester University. I graduate in a week and a half, and I just had a lot of opinions on what's happening at Ferguson, Eric Garner, all these different cases that revolve around the volatile issue of race. So I just wanted to talk about, you know, how I feel like the idea of race is separating us. I understand that the consequences and the effects of race are very real. That is actually what has been affecting all these Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till. That is the effects of race are real. But when it comes together, when it comes to finding a solution about the issue, race is not real. The whole black people think that it's protest rather than, and white people think that it's rioting. That in itself is the dichotomy that's keeping us apart. The fact, I think that we should just think of it as an American issue. A white person seeing a black person, just out of empathy, just out of sheer understanding, just out of knowing that both of these people are human, should be empathetic to want to help that person and to want to be a part of the solution. And I do think that silence does equal, acceptance of what's happening. Um, I wanted to talk about how I think white in itself is also a construct. It was constructed here in the 16th century when slavery came about, and the the planters of the South saw that the indentured servants and then indentured of both African origins and European origins were coming together and honestly forming the proletariat, and they saw that was could be a problem. So after that, they started imposing all of these different laws to kind of lock the African in his blackness, which became a label which equated black with slave, black with delinquent, black with subhuman, and yet in that, white was also elevated and given this kind of what it is now, how it's a privilege. So that was created in the 16th century. And I wanted to give you a background of that. And that kind of that construction that was made in the 16th century is still what we're living in now, which is called white supremacy. White, the idea, is what we're still living in. But in all actuality, race is a social construct, so it really isn't real. But we do organize ourselves based off of that, which is pretty sad since we are living in the information age where you could literally click onto Google and look up a lot of these terms: white supremacy, white privilege, race, racism, all of these terms which could enlighten people as to the effects of what it is now. Um, I also wanted to say that the fact that we're not coming together as Americans and as humans is what the powers that be wanted from the inception of America, which is to divide and conquer, rather than coming together as people who are in the 99%, we separate ourselves. And I also believe that the reason why a lot of white people, and I say that with quotation marks because the idea isn't real, but of course the effects of it are. And also, you know, I like to say that a lot of the new whites, and what I categorize as new whites are people who have become assumed into the majority after the civil rights movement of the 60s. And people in the new white are Italians, Irish, Polish, Europeans who came here during the 20th century, who helped fight in the civil rights movements and now have been absorbed into majority, and now they've forgotten their history. They're detached from that discrimination that they suffered from when they first got here. Signs which would say, we don't allow Italians to work here, Irish people to work here. They were even discriminate towards Catholics and all those things. And now the white people of my generation are detached from that struggle and that fight from their parents and their grandparents. So I feel that's another reason why a lot of white people don't empathize with what's happening now and would rather sit over there silent in their white corner rather than coming together like their ancestors or their families did in the civil rights movement, or even coming here in the early 20th century, when the reason why you have gangs of New York, it was a territorial issue. And what were the first gangs in America? They were not black people. They were Italians and Irish people. So I think a lot of people need to really look into their history and the migration patterns and how people have been able to evolve in America to understand what we're living in right now. So I am very saddened that we still live in a society which is very hypocritical and is living in the, institutional racism, but we can change that, and I genuinely believe that. And my father and I were talking about it, and he says that rather, of course, rallying and protesting does, bring people together in that struggle. But then what happens after that? What are the solutions? What are some things that we can do? And we talked about how we need people to be on these boards, and we need people become local politicians to change some of these laws, such as stop and frisk. We have the law that, this police officer who shot that 12-year-old kid, he was legally in the right to shoot him because that's what's in his, I guess, his police pamphlet or something. But what if we as a community were to put people into these coalitions that write these laws to change it? And that's really where change and solution really happens. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen. So my name is Janet Luce Saki. I am Afro-Latina, and I'm Pan-African, and I believe that we can act and enact change. So, bye.